Okay, so this is part one with miracles and DNA, with hospital records, and with real life experiences. People have miracles in their life, with extraordinary miracles. What I want to do is I want to go through my miracles, the ones in my life, and all the miracles that I know about and I've seen with my own two eyes. The people I've spoken to in the streets, people who've died 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times and come back, they probably have some of the most interesting stories to tell, in my opinion. I've been around a fair bit in my life. I'm very unusual compared to most. I've lived a completely different type of life and a very extraordinary life. And when you compare my life with anybody else's, it's really weird because there's not too many people that's walked my footsteps. And these are just facts. There are not too many people in the world today that's been walking in my footsteps and the footsteps I took. And that's just reality. And what I want to do is I want to go through miracles. Because let me tell you something. I never read the Bible. I never went to church. Never any of those things. I always sat on the fence. Okay? Never far left, far right. I didn't follow cops, politicians, educational systems, or any cults or any religions. I didn't follow anybody. I just stayed down to earth, right? I just stayed down with my basic common sense. I started to use honesty as the best policy because of what I went through as a child. I went through a lot of bullshit, a lot of hurt, a lot of suffering, a lot of rejection, drugs to numb myself, became a junkie, all sorts of shit. Went through all that kind of suffering. I made a lot of bits about this. But there were things in my life that was really different. And when I talk about things, I realised it wasn't well accepted amongst the community. Like when I was 5 years old, I told my mum about the worst moment in her life in 1943 in World War II. 7 years before I was born, I was only 5 years old. Now, how do you think my mum took that? That I'm telling her about the worst moment in her life in 1943 in World War II, 17 years before I was born, I'm only 5 years old. Imagine that what that would be like for a 5-year-old child and what it's like for a mother to hear that from her own son, who's only 5. I used to have nightmares, okay? And I'd say to my mum, Mum, where were we? What happened? She said, what's wrong, son? I said, Mum, you're sitting in this cellar and I'm sitting in your arms, Mum, and I'm terrified. You're terrified, Mum. And there's bowling ball racks with bowling balls on each side in a cellar somewhere. And we're looking out a little tiny window, Mum, and there's bombs outside. Boom, 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 boom. Where were we, Mum? What happened, Mum? Where were we? What happened, Mum? My mum freaked out. My mother freaked out. And I didn't know. I was only 5 years old. I was thinking, where were we and what happened? Why was I being tormented with this nightmare? Why did I have this nightmare? I can still remember that moment to this very day like it happened yesterday. To this very day, I see that picture, right, clear as bell, just like it happened yesterday, to this very day. Amongst many memories like this that can't be explained. And that's what I come to discover later in life. But you see, this particular moment, this very moment within itself, okay, today we know with DNA studies done that we suffer defective genes from our ancestry tools, and it's our gene defects, which is from our ancestry tools. We know that stress causes every mental disorder and everything we die from in stress-related diseases. So stress causes every single problem in our DNA, with every gene defect and everything we suffer from, and it's hereditary. And most of our gene defects is hereditary. That's proven with DNA studies done. So I'm going to explain something that no one else in the world can, okay? Because I come to learn this. What I learned was that when I was 5 years old, I was telling my mum about the worst moment of her life in 1943 in World War II without realising it. And I was telling her what was controlling her fear mechanism and why she was going to suffer, why she was suffering from stress and anxiety. My mum couldn't deal with the moment and told me I was dreaming. Now, this was in 1966. In 1977, my mother ended up with bipolar, stress and anxiety and panic disorders. And it was from this moment that controlled her DNA, right? She had a fear mechanism from the worst moment of her life in 1943 in World War II, the worst moment of her life. And that, in her genes, in her stress and anxiety, went into my DNA. So that became my gene defect. So by the time I was 20, 22, 23, I was also diagnosed with bipolar, stress and anxiety and panic disorders, exactly like my mum. So by knowing this moment and having this vision and having this dream, I was able to deal with it myself. When it came to attack me, right, I saw a psychiatrist at the top level, Dr. Alan Freed. In 2008, it's declared that I cured the human condition myself by the biggest mental health research ever conducted in global history. I had bipolar, I had stress and anxiety and panic disorders, and I cured it myself. And it's not seen to be curable, but I cured it. So the miracle involved in this is the vision that I had at 5 years old from my mum in 1943 in World War II, coded in my own DNA. The picture to your soul, the eye to your, the window to your soul is your third eye. The vision that tells you 1,000 words you cannot see. The vision that gives you the picture that tells you 1,000 words that cannot lie to you. Dimensional thinking, remote viewing, mental telepathy, ESP. You can go into the past and into the future. Like deja vu. When it happens to you, you don't know why. But I can see that vision, and I dream about that, and I see that vision 3 months early before it happens. So I know when I have deja vu exactly how I knew, because I saw it. I saw the future in a vision 3 months earlier. So I can explain how deja vu works the same way. And I have a lot of deja vu, and all things that I predict non-stop comes through all the time perfectly. If you go back 4 years ago and watch all 11,000 videos I've made here in the last 4 years, you'll see I predict things non-stop and you don't even realize it. Then 2 or 3 months later, everything comes through exactly the way I predicted. That's how I wrote my book, The Testimony Drug Will Be Born. What was going to unfold from 220 onwards, I wrote first time in 2004 when the book was stopped by the authorities because they couldn't believe it. And yet they saw it in the looking glass. So I was right smack bang on the money. mRNA technology comes from methamphetamine from Magipose in the days of Nimrod. It's an electronic magnetic device in vaccinations. I go into specific details about this, how Pandora's box starts opening up with Hitler's plan. Harari, the fourth industrial revolution architect for WF that every government's signing into, that's what he says. We're creating Hitler's plan. And it's Hitler's plan. That's why I go into this. Methamphetamine is 1/3 iodine crystals that creates iodine hydroxide gel in the vaccinations. Graphene oxide hydroxide gel. An electronic magnetic device on every patent. So it conducts to something, to an outside influence of reality. And that's the first thing you've got to wake up to. Anyway, my book becomes the evidence because everything I speak about, every single thing I predicted, unfolded perfectly. Every event I said that's going to unfold, unfolded perfectly, exactly when I said it was going to unfold. So that book becomes solid evidence I can see into the future and see into the past. My mum couldn't deal with it. So throughout my life, I've been met with a great resistance. And that's why I want to tell you about miracles that you can rely on. I didn't believe in the Bible. I never went to church, but let me tell you something that we all know for a fact. You're first introduced to God through the devil. Right? It's that simple. When you suffer the consequences and live in the underground world and you live in the streets, you see evil all the time, right? You run into it non-stop. And it shapes you and it molds you when you're suffering the consequences. And you take drugs to numb yourself and you can't cope. When you go through that walk of life, right, you're introduced to the devil constantly and it brings you to God. It makes you follow your instincts, to think instinctively. And that, my friend, is where you bear the right fruit and all the miracles start to unfold. So I'm going to make short videos about this. And in each video, I'm going to bring you, right, information about miracles you can rely on in DNA studies done and hospital research and people with experience, right? You've got to understand this. If you believe in God, now's the time to understand what these things are all about and why you can have faith in me above anyone else in the world on social media platform. Trust me. Watch my video I just made, okay? A natural DNA selection. You need to know.